我现在请乌克兰外交部副部长别查女士阁下发言。
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the Chinese presidency for convening this meeting. I'm also grateful for Undersecretary General Di Carlo for her briefing. At the outset, I would like to express our profound gratitude to all UN member states that just hours ago supported the relevant UN General Assembly resolution and demanded on the third anniversary of full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation of Ukraine swift achieving of comprehensive, just, and lasting peace for Ukraine consistent with the UN Charter. At the same time, we cannot say the same regarding the UN Security Council resolution. In our view, this document lacks basics. It lacks the qualification of the war as an aggressor of one member state against another member state. It also doesn't reflect the core principles enshrined in the UN Charter. Mr. President, 3 years ago, Russia started a full-scale invasion against Ukraine. 3 years of Ukraine's fight for freedom, for our independence, but also for the freedom of the entire democratic world. Today, more than 600,000 Russian troops are deployed on our territory, 3 times the number that invaded in 2022. Despite all odds, Ukraine's defense forces continue to stand firm, even as the disparity in military strength remains stark. This disparity exists because since regaining independence in 1991, Ukraine has consistently pursued disarmament, reducing the vast military arsenals inherited from the Soviet era. We took seriously the provisions of the UN Charter, setting peace-loving as a fundamental criterion for membership in this organization. We envisaged our region as an era of peace and prosperity. Without hesitation, we choose to become a non-nuclear state. We gave up the world's third largest nuclear arsenal in the hope of making the world a safer place. And while we do not regret the moral righteousness of this decision, we have learned a very harsh lesson from the Budapest Memorandum. A deal without viable and effective security guarantees is a bad deal. Meanwhile, Russia did the opposite, not only preserving Soviet-era stockpiles, but significantly expanding them. Today, as a result, Russia is capable of striking Ukrainian frontline positions and residential areas with thousands of guided aerial bombs every month. In 2024 alone, Russian aviation has launched 40,000 such bombs. Just imagine this figure on peaceful Ukrainian cities, on peaceful Ukrainian civilians. Moreover, Russia continues to escalate its weapons production, including ballistic and cruise missiles. Each month, Russia is capable of producing 40-50 Iskander missiles, 30-50 Kalibr missiles, and around 50 Kh-101 missiles. And these weapons do not just stay in stockpiles. They immediately deployed against Ukraine. But even this has not been enough for Moscow. That's why Russia engaged Iran and DPRK in its war against my country, thus making this conflict internationalized. What started in arms supplies has escalated further, with North Korean military units appearing in Europe and fighting against a European nation. And I'm glad to note that today's UNGA resolution adopted is having a reference to the DPRK involvement in this terrible war. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has suffered staggering losses: hundreds of thousands of soldiers, over 10,000 tanks and 22,000 artillery systems, 370 aircraft, and more than 12,000 multiple launch rocket systems. The Black Sea Fleet has lost 28 vessels, including its flagship. What remains of it is now forced to seek refuge, not even in the occupied ports of Crimea, but in the Russian ports itself. These outcomes are the result of two factors: the resilience of the Ukrainian people and the solidarity and support of the international partners. We feel this support and we are very much grateful for it. Russia attacks both of these pillars because despite all of its advantage, it has failed to break Ukraine on the battlefield. It tries to crush our spirit, primarily through terror. That is why it targets critical infrastructure and residential buildings. That is why Russian soldiers are executing Ukrainian prisoners of war en masse. These execution-style killings must be investigated thoroughly by international organizations, and all those responsible must be brought to justice. Russia seeks to undermine global security with Ukraine, solidarity with Ukraine. Its vast propaganda machine spreads aggressive disinformation, attempting to discredit our country and sow doubt about Ukraine's ability to preserve its independence. Now Russia is pushing an entirely unworkable principle, negotiating about Ukraine without Ukraine, and packaging its harmful narratives in an appealing guise to this end. And let me be clear on behalf of Ukraine that there is nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, and there is nothing about Europe without Europe. Let me assure you that Ukraine wants peace more than anyone, but not any peace. As our President Volodymyr Zelensky stated, we need comprehensive, just and lasting peace with clear security guarantees. Otherwise, it will not work. To achieve this, we must intensify diplomatic efforts to establish a comprehensive, just and lasting peace based on the principles of the UN Charter. It is in the interest of its entire humanity to secure such a peace this year. What Russia needs is not a peace, but a temporary pause in hostilities. Such pause would not bring peace. It would simply serve as a prelude to a larger war. Moscow needs time to replenish its losses, learn from its mistakes, and fine-tune its military economy. For 3 years, Ukraine has been saving time for others by withstanding the Kremlin's war machine. Our efforts and sacrifices must not be in vain. For that to happen, alliances built on shared values must be strengthened, not undermined. NATO and EU are indispensable elements of regional security, and Ukraine is eager to be part of them, not only as a security recipient, but as a security provider. And the Security Council, which bears the primary responsibility for maintaining peace and security, must live up to its mandate. Those responsible for the crime of aggression must not enjoy impunity. Sovereignty and territorial integrity within internationally recognized borders must be respected by all. We will continue to defend ourselves and strive for a fair and just peace consistent with the UN Charter. We know how to contain Russia, and our military has mastered the art of modern technological warfare. But however, we need to sustain this fight. We need more help from you. We need arms, air defense, technology, investment, tougher sanctions on Russia, and transfer of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine, and of course, political and moral backing. We must be mindful of the fact that this is existential war. This is existential war for the entire democratic world, for our democratic principles and values. And Russia has repeatedly tried to dismantle this rules-based order and our security architecture. It is impossible to stop the aggressor by appeasing. Appeasement doesn't work. Russia must implement the demands by the international community and withdraw its troops from the territory of Ukraine. Those responsible for the crime of aggression, war crimes, crimes against humanity must be brought to justice. We remain committed to the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against the Russian Federation. And let me reiterate once again This war is existential. It's not only about Ukraine, it's not only about Europe, it's not only about region. It's about our global architecture, it's about rule-based order, it's about entire democratic world. Thank you so much.
感谢别查女士阁下的发言。